The Alchemist, page number 78. Why do they make things so complicated? He asked the Englishman one night. The boy had noticed that the Englishman was irritable and missed his books, so that those who have the responsibility for understanding can understand. He said, imagine if everyone went around transforming lead into gold. Gold would lose its value. It's only those who are persistent and willing to study things deeply who achieve the masterwork. That's why I'm here in the middle of the desert. I am seeking a true alchemist who will help me to decipher the codes. When there when were these books written? The boy asked. Many centuries ago. They didn't have the printing press in those days. The boy argued. There was no way for everybody to know about alchemy. Why did they use such strange language with so many drawings? The Englishman didn't answer him directly. He said that for the past few days he had been paying attention to how the caravan operated, but that he had not learned anything new. The only thing he had noticed was that talk of war was becoming more and more frequent. Then, one day, the boy returned the books to the Englishman. Did you learn anything? Englishman asked, eager to hear what it might be. He needed someone to talk to so to avoid thinking about the possibility of war. I learned that the world has a soul, and that whoever understands that soul can also understand the language of things. I learned that many alchemists realized their destinies and wound up discovering the soul of the world, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of the life. But above all, I learned that these things are all so simple that they could be written on the surface of an emerald. The Englishman was disappointed. The years of research, the magic symbols, the strange words, and the laboratory equipment, none of this had made an impression on the boy. His soul must be too primitive to understand those things, he thought. He took back his books and packed them away, again in their bags. Go back to watching the caravan, he said. That didn't teach me anything either. The boy went back to contemplating the silence of the desert and the sand raised by the animals. Everyone has his or her own way of learning things, he said to himself. His way is not the same as mine, nor mine as his, but we are both in the search of our destinies, and I respect him for that. The caravan began to travel day and night. The hooded Bedouins reappeared more and more frequently, and the camel driver, who had become a good friend of the boys, explained that the war between the tribes had already begun. The caravan would be very lucky to reach the oasis. The animals were exhausted, and the men talked among themselves, less and less. The silence was the worst aspect of the night, when the mere groan of a camel, which before had been nothing but the groan of a camel, now frightened everyone, because it might signal a raid. The camel driver, though, seemed not to be very concerned with the threat of war. I am alive, he said to the boy, as they ate a bunch of dates one night, which with no fires and no moon. When I am eating, that's all I think about. If I am on the march, I just concentrate on marching. If I have to fight, it will be just as good a day to die as any other, because I don't live in either my past or my future. I am interested only in the present. If you can concentrate always on the present, you will be a happy man. You will see that there is life in the desert, that there are stars in the heavens, and that tribesmen fight because they are part of the human race. Life will be a party for you, a grand festival, because life is the moment we are living right now. 2 nights later, as he was getting ready to bed down, the boy looked for the stars. They followed every night. He thought that the horizon was a bit lower than it had been. because he seemed to see stars on the desert itself. It's the oasis, said the camel driver. Well, why don't we go there right now? The boy asked. Because we have to see it. The boy awoke as the sun rose. There in front of him, where the small stars had been the night before, was an endless row of date palms, stretching across the entire desert. We have done it, said the Englishman, who had also awakened early. But the boy was quiet. He was at home with the silence of on the desert, and he was content just to look at the trees. He still had a long way to go to reach the pyramids, and someday this morning would just be a memory. But this was the present moment, the party the camel driver had mentioned, and he wanted to live it as he did the lessons of his past and his dreams of the future. Although the vision of the date palms would someday be just a memory, right now it felt signified said, water and a refuge from the bar. Yesterday the camel's groan signaled danger, and now a row of date palms could herald a miracle. Bird speaks many languages, the boy thought. The times rush past, and so do the caravans, thought the alchemist as he watched the hundreds of the people and animals arriving at the oasis. People were shouting at the new arrivals. Dust all obscured the desert sun, and the children of the oasis were bursting with excitement at the arrival of the strangers. The alchemist saw the tribal chiefs greet the leader of the caravan and converse with him at length. But none of that mattered to the alchemist. He had already seen many people come and go, and the desert remained as it was. He had seen kings and beggars walking the desert sands. The dunes were changed constantly by the wind, yet there was the same sense he had none since he was a child. He always enjoyed seeing the happiness that the travelers experienced when, after weeks of yellow sand and blue sky, they first saw the green of the date palms. Maybe God created the desert so that man could appreciate the date trees, he thought. He decided to concentrate on more practical matters. He knew that in the caravan there was a man to whom he was to teach some of his secrets. The omens had told him so. He didn't know the man yet, but his practiced eye would recognize him when he appeared. He hoped that it would be someone as capable as his previous apprentice. I don't know why these things have to be transmitted by word of mouth. He thought it was not exactly that they were secrets. God revealed his secret easily to all his creatures. He had only one explanation for this fact. Things have to be transmitted this way because they were made up from the pure life, and this kind of life cannot be captured in pictures or words because people become fascinated with pictures and words and wind up forgetting the language of the world. The boy could not believe that he was seeing the oasis rather than being just a bell surrounded by a few palm trees, as he had seen once in a geography book, was much larger than many towns back in the Spain. There were 300 bells, 50,000 dead trees, and innumerable colored tents spread among them. It looks like the 1,001 nights, said the Englishman, impatient to meet with the alchemist. They were surrounded by children, curious to look at the animals and people that were arriving. The man of the oasis wanted to know if they had seen any fighting, and the women competed with one another for access to the cloth and precious stones brought by the merchants. The silence of the desert was a distant dream. The travelers in the caravan were talking incessantly, laughing and shouting as if they had emerged from the spiritual world and found themselves once again in the world of people. They were relieved and happy. They had been taking careful precautions in the desert, but the camel driver explained to the boy that oases were always considered to be neutral territories because the majority of the inhabitants were women and children. There were oases throughout the desert, but the tribesmen fought in the desert, leaving the oasis a place of refuge. With some difficulty, the leader of the caravan brought all his people together and gave them his instructions. The group was to remain there at the oasis until the conflict between the tribes was over. Since they were visitors, they would have to share living space with those who lived there and would be given the best accommodations. That was the law of hospitality. Then he asked that everyone, including his own sentinels, hand over their arms to the man appointed by the tribal chieftains. Those are the rules of war, the leader explained. The oasis may not shelter armies or troops. To the boys' surprise, the Englishman took a completed revolver out of his bag and gave it to the men who were collecting the arms. Why a revolver? He asked. It helped me to trust in people, the Englishman answered. Meanwhile, the boy thought about his treasure. The closer he got to the realization of his dream, the more difficult things became. It seemed as if what was that old king had called beginner's luck was no longer functioning. In his pursuit of the dream, he was being constantly subjected to tests of his persistence and courage. So he could not be hasty nor impatient. If he pushed forward impulsively, he would fail to see the signs and omens left by God along his path. God placed them along my path. He had surprised himself with the thought. Until then, he had considered the omens to be things of this world, like eating or sleeping, or like seeking love or finding a job. He had never thought of them in terms of a language used by God to indicate what he should do. Don't be impatient, he repeated to himself. It's like the camel driver said. Eat when it's time to eat, and move along when it's time to move along. That first day, everyone slept from exhaustion, including the Englishman. The boy was assigned a place far from his friend, in a tent with 5 other young men of about his age. They were people of the desert and came out to hear his stories about the great cities. The boy told them about his life as a shepherd and was about to tell them of his experiences at the crystal shop. When the Englishman came into the tent, I have been looking for you all morning, he said, as he led the boy outside. I need you to help me find out where the alchemist lives. First, they tried to find him on their own. An alchemist would probably live in a manner that was different from that of the rest of the people at the oasis, and it was likely that in his tent an oven was continuously burning. They searched everywhere and found that oasis was much larger than they could have imagined. There were hundreds of tents. We have wasted almost the entire day, said the Englishman, sitting down with the boy near one of the wells. Maybe we had better ask someone, the boy suggested. The Englishman didn't want to tell others about his reasons for being at the oasis, and couldn't make up his mind. But finally he agreed that the boy who spoke better Arabic than he should do so. The boy approached a woman who had come to the well to fill a gourd skin with water. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm trying to find out where the alchemist lives here at the oasis. The woman said she had never heard of such a person and hurried away. But before she fled, she advised the boy that he had better not to try converse with a woman who was dressed in black, because they were married women. He should respect tradition. The Englishman was disappointed. It seemed he had made the long journey for nothing. The boy was also saddened. His friend was in pursuit of his destiny, and when someone was in such pursuit, the entire universe made an effort to help him succeed. That's what the old king had said. He couldn't have been wrong. I had never heard of alchemist before. The boy said, maybe no one here has either. The Englishman's eye lit up. That's it. Maybe no one here knows about what an alchemist is. Find out who it is who cures the pupil's illnesses. Several women dressed in black came to the well for water, but the boy would speak to none of them, despite the Englishman's insistence. Then a man approached. Do you know someone here who cures pupils' illnesses? The boy asked. Allah cures our illnesses, said the man, clearly frightened of the strangers. You are looking for which doctor? He spoke some verses from the Quran and moved on. Thank you very much for listening. Have a nice day.